Dorian Huxley was 10 years old the first time he killed someone. His father was a heartless bastard. Waylon Baxter was a cold, calculating son of a bitch who only cared about two things: productivity and obedience. So, when word reached his ears that someone was planning to instigate a strike at one of his factories, Dorian's stepfather knew he had to make an example of the worker. He also saw an opportunity to teach his young son an undeniable truth about the world. If you wanted people to respect you, you had to make them fear you. And so, the young Dorian soon found himself in a tiny room, standing across from a man tied to a chair who had been beaten senseless by his stepfather. Waylon stepped back to admire his handiwork. He wiped the fresh blood from his knuckles with a dirty rag before pulling out a long, thin knife from his belt. He turned to Dorian.
"Finish the job,"
he muttered. Dorian's eyes went wide. "But I don't want to hurt him." Waylon gritted his teeth and struck the boy with the back of his free hand. Dorian fell to the ground, clutching his face as pain radiated across his skin.
"I don't give a flying fuck what you want. No son of mine's gonna grow up soft. Take the knife and slit the bastard's throat. Now."
Dorian took the blade with shaking hands. The man in front of him was barely conscious. His face was a swollen mass of open cuts and bruises. He stepped closer, holding out the blade in front of him like a tiny sword. He froze as he reached the man. His young mind couldn't fathom taking another person's life.
"Do it, boy!"
Waylon screamed.
"I can't!"
Dorian shouted. Waylon's heavy footsteps approached. He gripped the boy's wrist and pulled them forward. Dorian watched helplessly as his hands drove the blade into the center of the man's throat. Blood rushed out from within. Dorian felt the warm liquid crash over his hands. He watched as the last vestiges of life drained out from within the man, and in that moment, something changed in the young boy's mind. All the fear, all the shame, all the hesitation departed, and in its place was something he didn't expect. Joy, happiness, satisfaction. Dorian got a taste for blood, and he enjoyed it. Nearly 20 years later, Dorian Huxley was a titan of industry, a name that many associated with record earnings and levels of productivity other CEOs could only dream about. He was known for being ruthless, for doing anything it took to get the job done. The people that worked for him didn't respect him. They feared him, just like his stepfather taught him. So when Dorian got a call from a mysterious benefactor claiming to have something that would revolutionize his business's productivity and manufacturing output, well, Dorian couldn't resist. Despite all his connections, he couldn't vet this director, but his curiosity got the best of him. He would either secure the deal or make them pay for wasting his time. Either way, Dorian would come out on top. A few weeks later, he found himself in a warehouse on the outskirts of town. He stepped out of a black SUV with heavily tinted windows and unbuttoned his jacket as two men in suits and sunglasses led him into the warehouse. In the center of the vast space was a large, hermetically sealed glass cube. It was large enough to house several pieces of manufacturing equipment and had an airlock attached to the exterior. Neon lights lit the interior as two figures in white hazmat suits worked inside the space. Behind them, a third person was sitting in a metal chair with a white cloth bag over their head. Their hands were restrained behind their back with some sort of electronic handcuffs. They weren't moving.
"Right this way, Mr. Huxley," one of the men said, gesturing toward the airlock.
"When do I meet this director of yours?" Dorian asked.
"He will arrive prior to the start of the demonstration. Now please, we need you to change."
One of the men picked up an empty hazmat suit and held it out for Dorian.
"You expect me to wear that?" Dorian asked. "It's for your own safety, sir."
Dorian smirked, intrigued by all the safety precautions.
"Very well."
He put on the hazmat suit and entered the airlock. A pressure built in his ears as air rushed out and then back into the cramped space. When it was finished, the glass doors slid open and Dorian stepped inside. As he did, the two other figures in the clean room turned toward the man in the chair and pulled the bag off his head. The man slumped forward, still unconscious. He was badly beaten. Dorian recognized each cut and bruise. After all, he was the one that caused them.
"What the hell is this?"
Dorian asked.
"You're kidnapping my employees now?"
A voice responded through an intercom in the clean room.
Franklin Law, age 35.
He works on the assembly line at one of your manufacturing plants. He also tried to expose some of your darker secrets, didn't he?
Dorian spun around and saw a new person standing outside the airlock. He didn't recognize him, but the way he carried himself made it obvious who he was. So, you must be this director I keep hearing about. The man nodded.
Indeed. I brought Mr. Law in for this demonstration because I wanted to show you the power of what we are offering, Mr. Huxley.
Dorian turned back to the unconscious man. My time is limited. Let's get this show on the road. The intercom crackled behind him.
As you wish.
A low hiss began to fill the room. Dorian looked around as a thick fog began to permeate the air around him. He panicked for a moment before realizing that his hazmat suit would filter out whatever was in the air. Mr. Law was not so lucky. He woke up almost immediately and began coughing and sputtering. His body convulsed violently in the chair as blood and foam frothed around his lips. His eyes glazed over, becoming cloudy like the fog that surrounded him. And then, just as quickly as it had started, his symptoms ceased. Franklin Law stared ahead, docile and silent. It was an unnerving sight. What is this? What have you done to him? Dorian asked.
I've transformed him, Mr. Huxley. I've improved upon God's design. You're looking at the next phase of human evolution,
the director said through the intercom. Dorian knelt down in front of the man and waved his hand in front of him. The man simply stared straight ahead. So, what then? You've created zombies? What does this have to do with me? Dorian asked. Dorian heard the airlock open behind him. He spun around as the other figures in hazmat suits left the room. The door shut behind them, leaving him alone with the infected man. What the hell is this? Let me out of here! Dorian screamed.
I'm afraid the demonstration isn't over quite yet,
the director said, smiling from outside the clean room. Dorian heard a loud beep, followed by the sound of metal hitting the ground. He spun back around and saw that the handcuffs were now on the ground. The infected man in the chair stood up slowly, his head twitching. A low, wet growl escaped his lips. Stay back! Dorian shouted. The man let loose an inhuman roar as he charged toward Dorian. His hands wrapped around Dorian's hazmat suit and ripped it open like it was tissue paper. Dorian screamed as the fog poured into his lungs. He coughed and gagged as he fell against the doors of the airlock. With each breath, memories came rushing back. Needles, injections, a fungus, Ophiocordyceps, a foundation, a vision, a prophecy. Lying on the ground, Dorian's mind exploded as something deep inside of him awoke. Back off! He screamed. The infected man immediately ceased his attack. He froze in place for a moment before taking 2 steps back. Dorian stood up, pulling off the rest of the torn hazmat suit. He adjusted his suit underneath and fixed his hair as he breathed in more of the fog. He felt good. Really fucking good. The intercom crackled behind him.
I apologize for the theatrics, but we had to make sure the process would work.
Dorian looked away from the docile infected man and back out to the director, who was grinning from ear to ear. No one makes a fool of Dorian Huxley. You're going to pay for this.
You're angry, I understand, but soon you will see. You're a part of something bigger now, Dorian.
Dorian smiled as he looked over to the infected man. Get us out of here. Whatever it takes, he said. The infected man turned and picked up one of the machines in the clean room. It must have weighed over 1,000 pounds, but he lifted it like it was nothing. Dorian stepped aside as the infected man hurled it toward the airlock. It crashed into the walls of the sealed room and immediately shattered the reinforced glass. The director and his agents fled toward their vehicle as Dorian stepped out into the warehouse with the infected man by his side. The vehicle sped off, its tires squealing against the pavement. It didn't matter. Dorian would track down this director and get the answers he sought. In the meantime, their little experiment was a wild success. Dorian was one step closer to becoming the god he believed himself to be. He had emerged from that room as something more than a man. For a moment, he thought they had led him into a trap, but now he saw the experiment for what it was. A baptism. Not of water, not of fire, but of fog. Thank you so much for listening. This story, as mentioned in the subtitle, is part of Mina Howell's Ophiocordyceps universe. After I won one of Mina's challenges earlier this year, I was one of several people that were able to work with her to create a villain for her series. This is how Dorian Huxley was born. So I was really excited when Mina put out a prompt asking people to write stories set in the Ophiocordyceps universe, and of course, I had to do something about Dorian. So that's where this story came from, and if you haven't checked it out yet, please, 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 head on over to Mina Howell's Substack and check out the Ophiocordyceps series. It's Walking Dead meets The Last of Us with a whole fresh coat of paint, and it's one of the finest horror series that I've read in a long, long time. So check it out. You'll find a link at the end of this post.